to the Monday edition of Talking Football, and today covering the events from Germany and England, and we have a lot to talk about. With me here in the studio to do it, our football analyst Yoav Borowitz and I24 News Michael Friedman, who looks at the reaction in the global press. And tonight we'll talk about the championship race that is basically over in the Bundesliga, but another race that for the FA Cup is boiling hot with a giant match coming up at Old Trafford. All this and much more coming up. Let's get started. We begin in Germany, where Bayern Munich is now in a race only with itself. 2 years ago, they clinched a championship with 6 matches to go. Last year, they went one better and did it with 7 matches left. They now lead the Bundesliga by 11 points after winning this past weekend 3-1 in Hanover. Yoav, this is clearly not good for the Bundesliga. To say the truth, I don't think it's good for Bayern Munich either.
Yeah, they're leading by 11 points versus Wolfsburg, 20 points versus Borussia Mönchengladbach. This is just, the gap is just way too big.
It's worse than the worst times of the Scottish League.
Yes, it's kind of, ugly because, we expect so much more from German football, from the German league, from the Bundesliga, it's more of like a social, kind of atmosphere there in the league because the ticket prices are cheap, clubs are owned. So many goals, so much fun. A lot of goals, a lot of fun, great television. Clubs are owned at least 50% by the fan base, but you need competition. And then when Bayern Munich are, they were always monsters, but it seems now under Pep Guardiola, they're even becoming bigger, as especially when Borussia Dortmund, who we'll talk about, is going backwards. So weak. And it just doesn't, it's not fascinating. It's not interesting. Now, talking about Bayern Munich, they're a great team. So many great players. Every player on this team is an all-star. We don't have all-stars in soccer, but still, they would be if there was a game. And they have an all-star coach, obviously, in Pep Guardiola. So they're really playing beautifully. Now, the question for them is whether the lack of competition in the German league
bother them in Europe.
Will hamper them. Yeah, will bother them in the Champions League, because when they will play the European giants, they don't get this kind of competition in Germany. Now, the question is how they're going to react to this new challenge.
And Michael, what is the press saying basically about the fact that we're in early March? This is once again over.
Yes, the press basically feels that this title race is over. It looks as if no one really can catch up to the Bavarians at this point. Goal headlines read, Mueller double opens up 11-point lead. And despite the team, going down early on, the press spoke about Thomas Mueller as this, absolute heroics, this amazing comeback that he had, scoring 2 goals. And Guardiola's side, they really tighten the grip. They just absolutely phenomenal every time they step on the pitch. They are the team to beat. And Wolfsburg, unfortunately, they dropped points against Augsburg, which left the title race non-existent.
Yeah, we all became their fans just because we were hoping to see some kind of competition here in Germany. On to Dortmund, who were held to a goalless draw after 4 straight victories in the Bundesliga, and 5 if you count the German Cup. The good news for them is that they went for 3 games without conceding a goal. Again, if we're counting the midweek tie in the Cup. You have, with the quality they have up front, they will score most of the times. If their defense gets their act together, they should be fine.
Yeah, I think they're a very good team. And with Dortmund, we know what they did in the last few years. Lately, they've really been playing well, so suddenly a goalless draw. But for them, the huge game is what's going to happen next week against Juventus. Giant matchup, losing away 2-1. They can come back. They can actually, they can actually beat Juventus by even a
1-0 makes it good for them.
Yeah, 1-0 would be enough. Dortmund is not really exactly the 1-0 kind of team. But Juventus are also very strong with great defense, great all-around play. Just going to be fascinating because for Dortmund now in Germany, they have nothing to play for because they won't be relegated as we thought they might be a month ago.
And they're not going to be champions.
And obviously nobody's going to be champions there but Bayern. And I think also fighting for the Champions League is something possible for them, but it's also very, very difficult. So, they have a lot of challenges ahead of them.
Yeah. Well, what a match to look for, that against Juventus. Now, another results from this weekend in the Bundesliga. Wolfsburg, as we have said, probably gave up on any slim chance they may have had of catching up with Bayern Munich as they lose in Augsburg. But that doesn't mean their second place is in any danger, as the team behind them, Borussia Mönchengladbach, only managed a 2-2 draw at Mainz. And Bayer Leverkusen hope to grab a Champions League ticket for a third successive time. It looks good for now. This weekend they won 3-0 in Paderborn. If you're looking for competition, then the Bundesliga is certainly not the place for you. 11 points separate between Bayern Munich at the top and second place Wolfsburg, and another 9 points separate the Wolves from Mönchengladbach. 20 points between first and third. At least for the final 2 tickets for the Champions League, there is a fight as only 3 points separate Mönchengladbach from Augsburg in 6th place, with Leverkusen and Schalke also in the race. Now to England, where the Premier League took the weekend off and left the stage for the FA Cup, and to one giant match coming up tonight. The rivalry between Manchester United and Arsenal faded a bit in the past few years, as both clubs saw how other powerhouses such as Chelsea and Manchester City took over the top spots. And yet, anytime these two face off, it's a big deal, especially if we consider the fact that this is probably the only chance they have of winning something this season. Michael Friedman gets us ready for this giant clash.
Manchester United and Arsenal are focused on their big FA Cup tie and their hopes of capturing a piece of silverware this season. Both clubs are in the hunt for a top 4 spot in the Premier League and know how important it is to qualify for the Champions League next season. But the challenge they first face is beating their great rivals in the FA Cup quarterfinals. Manchester United has had an interesting road so far. Although they had an easy time over Yeovil Town winning 2-0, they would then struggle in a surprising draw against Cambridge United. But in the replay, the Red Devils proved victorious with a 3-0 win. They then went on to beat Preston 3-1 to take them to the quarterfinals. With all eyes on Louis van Gaal, the pressure for him to succeed is imperative, and the manager knows this will be a competitive matchup, as it always is when 2 of the best clubs in England face each other on the field.
It's a game between 11 players against 11 players on a high level, because Arsenal and Manchester United are placed 3rd and 4th in the Premier League, so it's nearly a final, I think.
Manchester United will have to be ready if they want to beat the defending FA Cup champions. Arsenal has had an easy road thus far, beating Hull City, Brighton and Middlesbrough. And the Gunners, who have often struggled throughout history against United in the FA Cup, will try to win back-to-back in the competition.
No, I think personally for me it's a special intensity, because it's between 2 teams who have a chance to win this competition. And both teams will think, if we get over this hurdle, we have a good opportunity to win the competition. And it's more focused on the FA Cup purely than on the Premiership.
And while every match and every competition is important for Louis van Gaal, it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone if he's eager to catch his first trophy for the Red Devils. Both teams will have their eye on the prize, but it won't be easy. And as everyone knows, it's always special when these 2 teams meet in the famous old competition. Football fans will be hoping to witness another epic battle.
Yoav, we may not have Roy Keane or Patrick Vieira to fight even before the match starts, and Arsene Wenger is the only representative of those good old days. But Manchester United against Arsenal, it's always big.
It's always a classic. You know, Old Trafford will be packed, tickets will be very expensive, ratings will be high, although we're talking 2 clubs that are not having a great season. Both are improved because they started the season very, very bad, you know, especially Arsenal.
They've been doing great lately,
Yeah,
if you count out that Champions League match.
Right, but they've been playing, both clubs are not playing so well, but they're getting a lot of points, but really not in a convincing manner. And, you know, we're talking 2 clubs with a lot of star power, a lot of superstars who are not playing, most of them as superstars. We're talking embattled coaches, you know, 2 legends of the game. Arsene Wenger, you know, being in Arsenal for almost 20 years now, 19 years, facing a lot of criticism.
He went up until last year, went for 9 years with no titles.
No title. He won the FA Cup. Now he wants to win the FA Cup again because he has no chance of winning the Premier League and the Champions League. So Arsene Wenger, you know, needs to win big. On the other hand, Louis van Gaal coming, you know, after great World Cup, but he never coached in England. He needs to prove himself in Manchester United after this
And he doesn't so far.
No, so far, and he changes tactics all the time. He changes players. He says some things that are not so acceptable in England. We're even talking a relationship that is kind of rocky between him and his assistant, Ryan Giggs. So just a lot of problems for both clubs. But on the other hand, great traditions, great talent, great fans. It's going to be a great game tonight, I think.
Some giant historic clashes in the past, especially in the FA Cup between these two clubs. Michael, how is the press seeing this? Is Manchester United Arsenal still a bigger deal as it was 10 years ago?
Absolutely. The media is extremely excited for this matchup tonight. It's going to be a thriller for the ages. The Telegraph headlines read, Wayne Rooney desperate to end wait for his first FA Cup title. Now, it might be a surprise that he
hasn't won it yet.
Very shocking when I found this out today that he's not won an FA Cup, but he's going to want to prove it. This is something he's desired for a long time. He said, when I was little, I dreamt of winning the FA Cup, but still haven't achieved it. So this is something he hopefully will get this year. And, Van Gaal, the two of them, it's his year to really prove to everyone that he's the manager. He's able to take, the team charge. But it's gonna be a challenge because Arsenal on the other hand, they're very strong, and we saw the independent headlines read Arsene Wenger ignores history lesson in bid to end long Old Trafford drought. So it's going to be something that Arsene Wenger is going to take this and not think about the previous matches that they've had where he suffered. Only had 1 draw, 4 losses, and only 2 wins. But he said, I'm not so worried about history. I don't believe in it. If I learned something in my life, it's the performance on the day decides the outcome of the day.
We speak Ryan Giggs, Arsene Wenger, they were there in 1999.
They remember it well.
And we know that in the era of the great Alex Ferguson, for most of the years, he owned Arsene Wenger in those matchups. Not always, but, most of the times.
Many times.
But now, Ferguson is not there anymore. David Moyes is not there. It's Van Gaal. If Wenger comes to Old Trafford tonight and has a big win, it gives him a lot of power in Arsenal, in the club, within the fans. It's just a huge game, maybe the biggest game for Arsene Wenger and Arsenal this year, although it's a cup game, especially after what happened against Monaco at home, in the Champions League, because they had the round of 16, they had a very relatively easy draw, and still losing 3-1 to Monaco. That's a failure, and we know there were a lot of failures for Wenger in the last few years. So, for him, it's
a championship game tonight.
And talking about a 64, 63-year-old coach, we're talking about tests or something to prove. It sounds a bit funny, but yet there is something to prove for Wenger, and I think he knows it.
That matchup is coming up tonight. Another big team in the FA Cup quarterfinals is Liverpool. They may have been hoping for an easy ride as they hosted Blackburn in Anfield, but the team from the Championship had other plans. Liverpool was the better team on the pitch. They had most of the possession, but the best chances to score came on the other side. Blackburn created plenty of danger next to Simon Mignolet's goal. The Belgian keeper saved his team on more than one occasion. As the game progressed, the Mighty Reds increased the pressure, but were very inaccurate up front. The visitors hang on to the goalless draw, and they will now host the replay at Ewood Park. Liverpool will have to sweat it out in order to qualify to the semis. Only one team is currently through to the semi-finals. It's Aston Villa, who beat West Bromwich 2-0, but this victory may cost them a lot of money as their fans stormed the pitch following the match, and the club is facing a huge fine from the English FA for this incident. Just like in Anfield, no goals were scored at the Coral Window Stadium in Bradford in the match between the local team and Reading, who will now host the replay next week. Yoav, Liverpool is still in the race, but this was far from being their best game recently.
Sure, because Liverpool has been playing better in the league. Not so great also, they had some lucky wins, but still much better than they played in the beginning of the season. But let's not forget, Liverpool losing to Besiktas, getting eliminated from the Europa League after being eliminated from the Champions League against Basel, a Swiss team. So any way you turn this around, and a lot of people, there are a lot of spins trying to turn this around and look at this reclamation story, and Liverpool are good and it's a good season. No, it's a very, and I'm a Liverpool fan, I still say it. It's a very
Yeah,
bad.
it comes from the heart.
It's
I
a
know.
very
You have a red
bad.
tie. It's okay.
It's a very bad season because when Liverpool doesn't compete for the championship almost from the get-go, I don't care what happens in the other competitions. It's a bad season, especially when we're talking failure in Europe and both competitions. So now they're playing for one thing. They're playing for two things. They're playing for the cup, and still yesterday not being able to beat at home a championship team. You
and
know,
they'll have a very difficult very difficult away game in Blackburn.
and Blackburn,
Indeed.
but still competing for the top four. So Liverpool can still finish
We'll
the
see that.
season with a sweet taste.
Yes.
But it's not a good season.
Yoav Borowitz, Michael Friedman, thank you very much. And we'll see you again tomorrow for Tuesdays Talking Football. Till then, have a good day. Bye-bye.